What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to do prices and part numbers for the Slam C4 coilover setup on this car. So I briefly talked about it in my last arrival video that I just did if you're following. A couple people have been asking about part numbers, prices, and links to everything that I did and the setup on my car. So I sat down and I wrote down all the details and part numbers, all the links and all that kind of stuff like that. So we're gonna go like step by step, front setup, rear setup, couple different options. And just one thing too to keep in mind. So if you look up coilovers right now for a C4 Corvette, most of the stuff that's gonna come up is gonna be like 89 to 96, and it's like $2,400, I think is what it is. Like Van Steel has a set or something like that. And then you'll have some other companies saying that they have them for like, you know, 1,500 bucks, something like that. But from the research that I did, they're legit they're not out there, or it's just an ad, or they're not really for sale. When I first got this car, I was doing the same thing. I was looking for things to buy. Then I did my research, went old school and just designed them and did them all myself. So the setup I have in my car is for super low. Like this is more like for looks only. It drives really nice. It just drags everywhere because the car's so low. Doesn't rub. Handles really nice. The ride's pretty comfortable, but the minute you go over anything rough or the road's crowned a little too aggressive, you're gonna hear the exhaust dragging and, you know, making all sorts of sparks and stuff like that, which isn't the worst thing because flat roads, it feels awesome. So there are other options. I am gonna put just kind of maybe some part numbers for ones that have a little bit bigger install height. And they sell so many coilovers, like basic coilover and spring setups, that you can literally, you know, if you wanted to come down an inch or two, you know, you just get a general installation height, and then you could put it in that way. And they recommend a spring size for that coilover, so it makes it a little bit easier. The ones on this car are pretty tiny. I think they're one of the smallest ones that you can get. So I will leave all the part numbers for that, like if you're gonna go like super slammed. The other ones that I had originally, they did get the car down pretty low, probably about the same, maybe just a little bit lower than if you would just do the spring bolts and the spring setup, the shims or whatever it is for the front of the car. The front definitely goes a little lower. So this is pretty much it. So what I'm gonna do is just get this thing jacked up, pull the wheels off of it, then I'll go over like step by step, part numbers and all that kind of stuff like that, and I'll leave it in the description. So we're gonna go ahead and get started to get this thing jacked up. All right, so here we go. So all the Coilover Shock itself are all QA1 Proma Star coilovers. They're all the same part number at all four corners. And the spring is actually the Summit Racing brand spring, so you can save a little bit of money. And they're a direct replacement for the QA1. And you need 4 of those as well. And they're 350-pound spring rate, and they're 7-inch spring on that. So I'm just going to start from the top here. So that is just a basic shock mount. They call it a stud conversion for an eyelet bottom shock, and you're going to need 2 of those, and that comes with the bolt and the hardware. And I think I ended up having to cut the bolt down a little bit, and then I used a top shock mount like washer right here on that as well. And then moving downwards, the lower mount, that's a shock mount T-bar conversion, and that is QA1 part, and you'll need 2 of those as well. And then also what I did too, I mentioned in the first video, I just notched these sway bar end links here for clearance, and I mean it's tight, and it's only just because it's extended right now, but it doesn't hit at all. And that's everything you need for the front. So the bottom T-bar, coilover, 7-inch spring, and I use the same springs on all 4 corners too. And then that top mount. Van Steel does sell one that's beefier and has like an alignment ring that goes in the top. But I forget what they were like over $100 and some, but these have been working out pretty well so far. So I haven't had any problems with that, even though it looks a little hokey, but it's been working really well. So I'm gonna go ahead and move to the back now. Okay, now for the rear, starting at the top. If you can see in there, that is just a factory upper shock mount. You don't need any special hardware or mount for the top. Factory bolt going through there. I do have a washer, a flat washer, and a shim, and I did sand down the urethane bushings on either side of those to get clearance to push the coil over forward in the car to keep it away from the axle, which is very close. And same thing, they're QA1 Proma Star Coilovers. And the only thing I did for the rear mount is I did buy the Van Steel mounts. I originally had the first set on the factory stud, like lower shock mount stud. I had it spaced out pretty far, which was putting like a ton of leverage on the actual stud, so it kind of worried me a lot having that kind of weight and pressure on it. But like I said, you probably could fabricate something if you are handy in the metal department to make something instead of spending the, I think it's $260 for these. I was in a little bit of a time crunch and I wanted to get it done, pretty much just being impatient me, and I just pulled the trigger and bought those. So that's it for the rear setup. Now there was a couple things I fabricated. I did have to grind a little bit to make that Van Steel mount sit in there right, but not much, just a little bit of sanding on the factory knuckle. And then I did the same thing for the urethane bushings in the bottom part of the coilover shock. I did have to sand those down to have them fit inside the Van Steel mount, and that was the only little bit of a difference. And then the other thing that I did too, and you probably won't have to do this if you just go like an inch or two lower. You probably could just leave it how it is. But what I ended up doing was I switched the tie rod from up top here where it normally is, and I just turned it upside down, and I used a ball joint reamer that I bought, and I reamed the bottom of this out here just to get clearance in here, because when this thing's down on the ground, this tie rod, like track bar, would go all the way up and it would smack up in the frame rail here. Every time you hit like the slightest little dip in the road, it would smack it. So instead of notching the frame, that was probably the easiest way to do that. You could make your own Heim joint bars and stuff like that, but this is pretty much like, I think the tool was roughly $70 to get the reamer, and I did both sides for that, and it just saved a lot of time and trouble. And also the bump stop has been removed, and I did grind some areas down there just for clearance purposes. So that is the rear setup, and now I'm gonna just go over the prices of everything for you. Okay, so now for the real numbers here. So keep in mind, I told you earlier, $2,400 for bolt-in C4 coilover. When I did the numbers, and this is including the reamer tool, that was $68.99, even just the QA1 coilover tools, and the Van Steel mount, all 4 coilovers, all 4 springs, the 2 upper mounts in the front, the 2 rear mounts in the back. Parts alone was a total of $1,318.69. So if you think about it, it's really not a lot of money to build your own coilover set. Now, if you eliminated the Van Steel mounts, which was, they were $259.99, you eliminate that, and then you eliminate like the ball joint reamer, like if you don't do that, that puts you like well under $1,000 for a set of coilovers, like good coilovers that are adjustable, 6-way or 12-way adjustable dampening. So I mean, it's really a good price. You really can't beat it. I thought it was a lot more. Like when I first did the math and sat down, I'm like, oh, it's probably at least $2 grand or so. You know, you save a little bit, but it ended up being a really good price. So like I said, you know, you could either go the Super Slam way, or you could just go pick your own QA1, you know, the proper shock and spring that you want for your desire. But as far as like mounting them, setup, all that, you can see kind of like what it takes. There are definitely going to be some little bit of adjusting and stuff like that. It's not just a direct bolt on a weekend. I mean, it took me a while to get everything just nailed, and the wheels cambered in just right, and the rubbing issue just right, the ride just right. So it's just definitely things like that that you have to look for. So, you know, it's definitely worth doing. Obviously, if you take it somewhere, the labor alone, I couldn't even imagine what the labor would be, because you have to remove front transverse spring, a rear transverse spring, and then all just this custom stuff would be like hours and hours to do. This channel is all about building your own projects. just getting out there and just trying to do it. And then this is just a perfect example for like $1,000, $1,300 most. You get a really nice set of coilovers for your C4, and you can go out and have fun with it. So if you enjoyed the video, press like, subscribe to the channel for more Corvette stuff, more C4 stuff, and thanks again for watching.